Has Matt Murdock's worldview been rocked to its very core by the Punisher? And by working together, can they possibly stop a new generation of criminals from seizing power in New York City? Well, let's hop to the pages of Daredevil Punisher, The Devil's Trigger issue number 2 and find out together, shall we? So then, picking up directly from where the last issue left off, Daredevil is making his way home after escaping a trap laid for him by the Punisher. Of course, this was no regular trap. With Frank it rarely is. The Punisher was trying to say something to Daredevil here, that his view of the world, and especially his view of justice, simply does not work. Not only did the Punisher gun down a very prominent member of the Gnucci crime family, but he also set up Daredevil to witness Gina Russo, a drug trafficker that Matt had put behind bars, murder another up-and-coming player to try and steal Gnucci territory. Understandably, a broken, battered, and bruised Matt returns home with about a million questions. He decides to put some feelers out on the street by calling up Misty Knight, before eventually planning to touch base with Foggy Nelson tomorrow at the local diner so they can compare notes. Along the way, Matt ends up coming face to face with a brand new neighbor, a woman by the name of Catherine. Catherine is a pretty woman, so of course Matt turns on that classic Matt charm almost right away. Because hey, just because you're working another gangland case doesn't mean now isn't the perfect time for lovin'. Yeah, Catherine isn't exactly too important in this issue, but I'm sure she will be. When Matt sits down with Foggy, they once again bring up Gina Russo. She had committed enough crimes that she should have been in jail for at least the next 40 years, yet somehow, someway she managed to cut a hell of a deal to get her released early, meaning that there is probably some major power player behind her pulling strings. Then of course we have the Punisher himself. As we check on in with Frank, he is actually leaving probably one of his most famous battles from the pages of Marvel Knights. Again, remember, this is actually a flashback story taking place between the panels of that original classic run. You'll remember that Punisher had actually fed Ma Gnucci and her goons to a bunch of animals at the zoo. Hell, that scene was so cool and memorable they even adapted it in the ultra awesome and criminally underrated Punisher video game on the PS2, and hey, Jimmy Palmiotti, who wrote this book, wrote that game as well. Punisher attempts to make his way back home to lick his wounds. However, when he's on the train, he ends up getting accosted by a group of would-be gangbangers who also seem to have an affinity for skull t-shirts. These guys are as brave as they are stupid, and they figure now would be the perfect time to pounce on an injured Punisher, taking him out and becoming street legends in the process. Of course, Frank refuses to go down without a fight, and as such starts knocking heads left, right, and center, and wouldn't you know it, out of all the trains in all of New York City, this melee just so happens to be taking place on the very same platform that Matt Murdock is waiting on. Obviously, he can't let Frank get himself killed despite their tumultuous relationship, and as such, Matt decides to suit on up and assist him in the battle. It's all very chaotic, very close quarters, very bone-crunching stuff, but together, the Punisher and Daredevil are able to make short work of the goons. However, despite working side by side a moment ago when it comes to dealing with the ultimate fate of the gang boss, a guy nicknamed Locksmith, the two vigilantes end up having a major communication breakdown. The Punisher wants to paint the subway car with this guy's brains, but Matt just can't let that happen. Even if this Locksmith guy is a hardened killer with several murders under his belt, Daredevil still thinks it's better for society as a whole and the families of this guy's victims to see him face justice and rot away in a cell for the rest of his life than the very quick and, relatively speaking, painless Punisher method. Matt swoops on in and throws his billy club to knock the gun out of Frank's hands. Frank runs off, and that's pretty much the long and short of it right there. And so that was Daredevil Punisher, The Devil's Trigger issue number 2, everyone, and overall, this second issue felt a lot like issue 1, if I'm being honest. The story didn't really actually move that much forward. We didn't really learn anything all that new, and the actual fun conceit of all of these events taking place during the events of the Marvel Knights Punisher run are a little less novel the second time around. That's still not to say there's anything particularly bad about it. Jimmy Palmiotti, as always, shows to have a real mastery of both Frank Castle and Matt Murdock's internal monologues, and it's fun that we do get to switch off between them. The action is pretty solid, and the choreography is creative. I love the idea of these two heroes having to fight in such a small enclosed space. Bianchi's art is nice. It's just not exactly anything we haven't particularly seen a dozen or so times before when it comes to both the Daredevil and Punisher. But hey, it was a light week. I didn't have much else going on, so I'm certainly not going to complain that hard about it. Overall, I'd give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Maybe Maybe things will start to heat up in issue 3. Maybe there's some big wrinkles or reveals coming down the pipeline. Maybe I'll come back and check it out. Maybe I won't. Not exactly sure yet.
Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quests. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all.